Dr. Mkabela, thank you so very much for the kind words. Good morning again, colleagues. It's good to see you all. We were just here last week for the BFEP launch, which many of you supported, and we are very grateful for that. What I thought I would do, you probably see in the program, Andrew and Sandile had asked that I talk about the agricultural competitiveness and how the work that all of you are doing supports in ensuring that we are able to participate and be where we are in the world. And Andrew, I thought I should change things a little bit, in part to save myself, because I am an economist, not a scientist like Lukashni and the other colleagues, but two, to recognize that we are operating in an environment that is shaped by other factors that I think we must always pay attention to. Not to say what we are doing here is not important, it is fundamental, but it's operating in a realm of things. And much of this, as Dr. Mkabela has said, he hates it when I call him Dr. Mkabela, but he is. I will attempt to affirm a couple of points that all of you are going to do, because in this reality, risks and reforms, it covers much of the points that I think in various conversations all of us we have talked about and reflected on some of these. But I do want to start off, Mr. Chairman, by saying that the work that the NAMC are doing with you guys at SACTA and many other stakeholders is quite fundamental to the success that we do. We talk a lot in South Africa about how exports are going, what is happening in logistics, jobs, and all kinds of things that are, from an economic perspective, they are on top of mind when you are observing the progress of the food sector. But we rarely acknowledge what I think is at the heart of all of this, because there are two things that really sustain all of what we are doing. It is the seed industry, as well as those that are in the agrochemical space. That's the one aspect, because without these improvements in genetics, you wouldn't be talking about food security and all of the good things and the jobs that you are actually seeing. At the back there with Tobias, we were just remarking about how in the 80s and the 70s, you were growing even maize at over 4 million hectares in South Africa and producing yields that were less than 10 tons. Today, you are half that. When you think about the yields, you are almost twice in terms of the output of what you are getting in there. And there's nothing more than the work of the breeding that has actually led into those successes. And the second aspect, of course, is on the users of what we get to produce. You are producing grains, but the colleagues that are in the animal industry, all of the work that they are doing is at the heart of this. And I think today, in engagement where it's a stakeholders and the broader public, it is always important that we affirm and acknowledge the benefits that we get from the seed industry. And the second aspect, again, emanating from a conversation we're having there, in the environment where we are also talking about climate change and everything else that comes along with that, is the fact that seed breeding is one part and parcel of the tools of adapting to the environment that we are in. For you not to go around tilling all land to save trees and make sure that the environment is remain intact, you have to be increasing the capabilities of how much you can deliver per hectare. And I think that lies in what we are doing today. And I am also glad, because someone was asking about how we are collecting all of these levies, and they are collected through the legislative process. And we complain, many of us, Sfiso Ndombela, who's the president of the Agricultural Economic Association, he always writes about policies and how we don't implement the policies in South Africa. I've added a voice in that choir that we are not doing a lot. But I think many of you in this room, you will agree that what's on number 3 there is what enables us this morning to be able to have the conversation that we are having today, because that's the marketing act. That's what guides us in the improvement and the work that we are doing today. But that is not the end, and this is now bringing me to the reality of South Africa, because we are thinking and talking as stakeholders about the seed breeding and the grain industry. But I think the bigger part of what we have to be operating in is what is guided by the number of policies. And these are the policies that are supposed to be driving the growth and the progress of this sector, either through making sure that transformation or shared prosperity or whatever you want to call it, we are able to enjoy it. And I think that we will be able to do it if we are able to implement a number of the policies and the programs that we have thought about. I don't need to recite many of these. All of you that are sitting in this room are pretty much aware of these policies. But I will hone my input into the last one of this, which a number of you are already involved in, which is the story of the master plan, which we always talk about. A day or yesterday, the NPC was sitting in Joburg with the NAMC and the other people thinking about how do they come up with a new version of the implementation of this. And I think part and parcel of the programs of what we are doing in here, they have to serve the purpose and the work that the chairman outlined in his opening remarks, but at the same time tie back into the bigger vision of where we are going as South Africa. And I would urge that the implementation of that program, to me, remains as central as we are sitting in here. Because as we are not implementing and working and moving forward, of course, the pot will become smaller also that we are collecting on. Because for us to collect and get all of these things and the pot to be bigger, the sector and its productivity also needs to be widening. And as we are not progressing or moving with the implementation, there are a number of self-inflicted problems that we are also putting on ourselves as South Africa. Either you are talking about the people that are in livestock, all of the issues that they face, which impact the demand of the products that we are receiving in here, or all of the colleagues that our colleagues have been, all the problems that our colleagues have been talking about the vaccine manufacturing and all of those problems. Because I think they may seem as if they are not in the grain industry, but as you all know, you are feeding, we are part and parcel of the interlinked industry, which has all of these chains that we are serving. So we have to be thinking comprehensively as South Africa in order for us to continue to thrive and grow and maintain all of these productivity levels that we have been enjoying in our sector. Because I mean, since May up until today, with the exception of this conversation that we are having, if you were to ask what conversations are people having in South Africa, we're having two dialogues. One about the animal health stuff, and the second dialogue, it was about the exports thing. And all of those are necessary. But I do think we have to engage a bit more with the SANSO, the crop life, and think deeper about plant health in South Africa, as well as some of the things that may emerge in the coming years. Because right now we are thinking a lot and putting a lot of effort in these aspects that are related to animal health because it is on top of mind. But you can only imagine if we are getting some of the problems within the grain industry. Corne and Tobias and the others were panicking when they were encountering goss wilt and all of these problems last year. And I think for me, while here we are talking about breeding, but animal health, plant health comprehensively is one of those conversations that as South Africans, to a certain extent, we need to be thinking about and thinking about those realities more strongly, because we do have structures of what we need to do. In animal health, all of the structures are there. We just need people that can implement and follow through what needs to be done. In same way as you see those directorates and the structures that I've mapped up for animal health, we have the same ones for plant health. And I think it is around those aspects then of saying the collaboration and putting the right people and implementing all of these programs that we need to do is one of the things that we must do. And we talk a lot about stressing this thing on government. And I'm looking at Bonani and Swiso and the colleagues that are sitting at the back, because the reason we always say government, either you are a DST or you're in agriculture, some of these are public goods. But I think here, of course, then you are paying for some of these things. But I think the comprehensive thinking about this and the government also doing its part is important. Why am I mentioning and going all around these programs? I'm going all around on them because all of the success and the growth that we talk about, we write that from 1994, sector doubling jobs and all of these things. Again, it's centered on these two things. But the other aspect is the issue of the exports. Because without proper animal health and the plant health and making sure that we are as competitive, we are not going to be able to enjoy the exports focus for quite some time. We pride ourselves today in South Africa by saying we are the only African country in the top 40 global agricultural exporters, ranked somewhere at number 32. But that is not always as a given. It's through your efforts continuously, but also, of course, in ensuring that that work does not stop today. Someone was asking there about this collection on Andrew when he was standing here, and I think that making sure that we participate, there is money for breeding, is exactly what enables that, and all of these gains that I've listed on the sides. Either we are talking about employment, we are talking about those export earnings, as well as the food security gains that in generally, which is the ultimate goal of what we are here in South Africa and talking about. The plant health stuff even begins to be much more important when we are thinking about the exports. Because the general understanding is that half of our agricultural fortunes are livestock and poultry, which is true when you are thinking at the gross value added of the sector. But the other important thing is that when you think about the exports in South African agriculture are purely driven by the fruit, wine, as well as what you guys are doing in the grain industry. In the top 10, you will see maize and a whole range of fruits and wool, as well as the wine on that. But all of those also mean then, without a heavy investment, again, on the dialogue of this morning, but most importantly, on a plant health side. You know, there's a conversation that is going around about all of these tariffs, which the US is using and many others. But we forget that other countries like the EU and Asia and others may not be as brave or as brazen as the United States to actually use tariffs. But they will continue to use the non-tariff barriers, which is why the investment on plant health, even if we are not affected, but we need to maintain a reputation that South Africa complies with all of the standards that are out there. We are doing science at the highest level because people are not looking for you to actually have outbreaks. They are looking for you to have a signal that you may be having some diseases, and then they start to block you and say, look, we need to take you through all of this chain. And thereafter, you're not going to be able to see those gains. Wandile here at SACTA runs this program, which is related to transformation, which is around inclusiveness and bringing more people into the circle. But that 20%, Andrew, that you are funding for transformation aspects, without the exports, it has no longevity because at the end of the day, those new people must produce, but that produce must go somewhere because as a country, we are already sending outside to the world market about half of what we are producing. So if you are thinking about increasing that without actually thinking about these scientific constraints of ensuring that we are pure on that side, we may run into hindrances. And as I said, not all of us will be as brazen as what we are seeing in the United States, but many others will be using the non-tariff barriers. And one of these risks that I think we have to appreciate, I was joking with the colleagues at the back, Bonani and Vili there and Davi, saying, I'm here to deliver a foreign affairs speech, but not in a way of the general. But I think there is an important aspect on this, because South African agriculture is an important sector of our economy, but it exists in a world that is changing. There are two things that are happening in the world, and we get told whether we must choose to be with the West or we must choose to be with the East. For a long time in the 2000s, we were with the West, which is on your left-hand side, but commerce has changed. It is red, as what you are seeing on your right-hand side of the screen. But I think agriculture in South Africa, it's about finding a sweet spot in the economic diplomacy between those two worlds. As you have seen in the previous slides, that our exports and commerce is largely in the Western side. But when you are thinking about tomorrow, about where the value will come from, the value may be coming more in the Middle East as well as in Asia. And I know many colleagues that are at SACTA and the others are working and opening up a number of markets that are leaning in these areas. And I think this is something that the South African policymakers are always having to balance. And of course, balancing all of this in a world that is changing, where incomes are also not going to be as robust as we have seen. Because the thing about the tariffs is that as they declined from the 1980s, 1800s, all the way into the early 2000s, they brought about the increase in global economy growth and the improvement in the living standards and the demand for all of the things that we produce in our sector and many other people are producing in the other sectors of the economy. Now, the reversal and this increase in the tariffs, it means it can also have the same possibility of shaving off that prosperity that we were seeing, as well as the gains that would come with that. And already we are not going to see a lot of people putting a lot of heavy investment on the ground because the uncertainty about what will be happening, not only now the US tariffs, but how other countries are changing, is part and parcel of what is guiding this environment, which is why if you look at the work coming out of the IMF and the World Bank and many others, they are seeing growth in the world economy that is less than 3%. And we all know that the world in general, it grows at about 3.6%. For South Africa and many others to benefit from that, but also the industry that we are in to continue to see the gains in the world. So we are in this environment that may not be growing. We may be forced to take choices on trade, but at the same time, we need to be generating enough money to spend so that we maintain the scientific capabilities of producing the great grain quality and the other products that we are in. And I must make a comment, since I've flagged that I will talk about foreign aspects, because we always get told that only if we listened to what President Trump was demanding, we wouldn't be having problems in the US and in the world. South African agriculture will be thriving. But I think it's important that we remember that some of the problems we're experiencing, either with the US or anyone in the world, they've been coming. They were not brought by President Trump. They've been with us for quite some time. You will all remember that in 2014, some who have been in the industry, you remember Kevin Lovell, he was in the Poultry Association. He was fighting a lot at the renewal of AGOA at the time, and the issue was poultry. And you fast forward, there were issues of the intellectual property rights. There were Lady R situation. Either you believe that there was something in Lady R or not, it doesn't matter. The perception is as it is. It messed up the environment that we are in. This is to say the risks in the world market which end up influencing agriculture is something that has been building up for quite some time. What we are now seeing is really an acceleration of all of those things, which is why what the colleagues in government, DTIC, DECO, and many others, we wish them well, and they have to continue to engage so that they put us in a good space. And there's one thing that as a sector we will have, Tobias, to be focusing on a lot, and Corné. I think the issue of economic diplomacy linked with trade is something that as associations we will have to devote a lot of energy on. We've always thought that we must engage with the Department of Agriculture, which we should, but I think we must engage further at DERCO and the others about thinking about our commercial interests, because the risks that are there in the world are changing in a profile and then evolving in an aspect that is becoming much more unpredictable for a sector that is export-oriented like ours. But I do also want to underscore, as I close here in the next 4 minutes or so, that our problems are not all brought to us as if we are this island of angels. Everything is just occurring to us. We have participated in these problems. That low growth is not just the slowing of the global economy. It's a mediocre growth. It's less than 2% for quite some time. These are numbers coming from Davi's colleagues at RMB, Azaya, and the others there. But I think the key thing to understand is that the private sector in the South African economy has not been investing at all. If you think about that graph that you're seeing there, there's a line there, the green one. That green line, look at it from year 2009 all the way up until to today. If you look at it, it has actually not increased to the levels that were there in the 2006. And a lot has to do with the sentiment. And this sentiment that is downbeat is driven by our own problems, which I think on Operation Vulindlela, they've identified them quite correctly. Electricity, ports, corruption, and many others. He wrote a lot about corruption. You should buy his book. It's called The Enemy Within. The Enemy Within. That's the title of the book. You will pay me. I'm advertising for you. And that's an important aspect which he dives deeper on, this aspect of corruption. But I think the other important thing in South Africa is the municipality aspects. Their linkage and their efficiency and their necessity in agriculture, but also for them contributing to this slowing of the global economy aspect. Now, let me close with a few points here on why I was saying Corné and the others at Grain SA must be focusing on the issue of economic diplomacy. It has a lot to do with the trade diversification, because we will have to work to retain what we have, but also looking at the new markets. And I think these markets in the Far East, in a greater Middle East and Asia, and of course retaining what we have in Europe is an important aspect, especially thinking about the lowering of tariffs and the phytosanitary barriers. And I think the phyto barriers links again to the work of SACTA and to the work of plant health in general, because this is what many people are always raising and using to block our access. And I like this Middle East area very much because they buy a lot and they do have the money, and South Africa is almost non-existent there. If you think about the Saudi Arabia, we are less than 1% or 1%. UAE, the numbers are as mediocre in our participation, but when you think about what they buy from the world, most of these countries are spending over 20 billion US dollars on bringing the products and making sure that they participate in the world. Now, the title of my slide was about risk, recovery, and reforms. Where should these reforms be? Which is my second last slide. And I will bring in the slide I bring in every conversation, because I want this slide to haunt you, because these are the broad aspects that I think in South Africa overall we need to be doing. It's again the biosecurity aspect, the registrar. I started in this sector, people were talking about Act 36. Those problems of over a decade ago, they are still the same ones today, and I think that we need to move with speed on that. The issues of exports and many others are all of the things that we need to be doing. And all of this needs to be done anchored on the land reform, which is that shared prosperity that Wandile and the others are working on, which we need to release. Leona and the others are here, which can actually action this, and Jane McPherson and the other colleagues, because much of their work will be based on that 2.5 million hectares of land and some of the land that is in the former homelands. The key question then is, when are we going to move on all of those reforms? And I think this is one thing that as a sector we have to always underscore and make sure that we get those things done. I can see the time is flashing, and even the good doctor there is looking at me, so let me shut up. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Wandile, but you're not going to leave. You're going to stay here. In case the president has invited you to a meeting, we can call him and say, sorry, Mr. President, we're still busy. Wait. You have to take a few questions. We're running out of time, but we have to create a slot for people to ask questions. That's the value add of this stakeholder engagement meeting, so that people can interact, can ask questions. While you're waiting for the mic, you know, my key takeout about Wandile is that he's one guy who acts like a mice. You know what he does? He bites and then so he gives you the nice part and then he also gives you the ugly part. He's a very balanced guy. So he will tell you how we are shooting ourselves in the foot by some of the things that we do, either in government or private sector or other people. But he will also tell you how the value of the sector has grown since 1994. He will also tell you scientifically how the exports are growing, and the value add is we're doing extremely well in that regard. And our shortcomings, of course, is on the diplomatic part. There's a whole lot of stuff we can do there. What I don't understand, and I think it's something which the industry must debate and must find a way, how the industry can contribute to economic diplomacy in such a way that it's not overly reliant on the government to open up markets. How you can do, business to market relations as opposed to government to market relations, and how you can do it in such a way that you don't go out there and say certain things that otherwise you should be saying at home, and you say it out there, and then the foreigners react in a way that they block you. But you went there to look for a market. And by what you are saying there, you end up blocking yourself from getting the market. You see the contradictions there. I think we should find a platform where we can capacitate the agri sector in the various subsectors on how they can box cleverly when they go abroad to open up markets, and in a way also collaborate with the government so that you can leverage on the capacity that's available in terms of resources. Not everything that the government, not everything the government is able to do or is supposed to do, it does it properly. But with collaborations and capacity, more can be achieved. If only we all are aware, what is called strategic awareness of the loopholes and the dangers out there, and we can box cleverly together. EFF at the back.
I've got a solution for you. I think we should just send Wandile over to the White House, because between your diplomacy, your boxing skills, and your knowledge, I'm sure somebody can deal with Trump. It's going to be you. But my question is
Your name, please, and where you come from?
Sorry, I'm Lindy Buerta from Farmers Weekly.
Okay.
My question is related to NBTs. South Africa is one of only a handful of countries who is electing to regulate gene editing the same as GMOs. And I know the industry is working very hard to try and get them to change their minds on that, just so that there's a smoother regulation process. Wandile, you seem to have the ear of our president. Is there any movement or any appetite or indication that South Africa might be changing their mind on that and might be creating a smoother pathway for NBT regulation in future?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Lindy. Let me say this, and I mean, Lukashni is here. They are working on those things. I'll answer you very quickly in two ways. One, I would say everyone that works from the union building embraces science, and they have a clear understanding that we wouldn't be where we are without the scientific endeavors on seed breeding, on genetic improvement in the animal, in the livestock space. And the president has seen that even on his personal side of his work, the gains on some of these things. The dilemma of the change of the policy of the framing is really not even a union buildings issue. It's the issue of the Department of Agriculture, which is where I think Lukashni and the others are working with the registrar and the GM committee to figure out about how they move on that direction. From where I sit, personally, the view that I would put on the government is that we have to move with what Sanso and many others have been advising on this, because what they are essentially doing is that South Africa don't be left behind. And I think we take for granted, again, these things that in the early 2000s, we were the first to embrace science. We adopted the GM seeds and all of these things in year 2000, 2001, when we started going on full-blown commercial. Now that the science is evolving, South Africa has again to remain on the lead and not be sitting on the back like what we are doing at this point. And I think it's the department, to be honest, that needs to be moving in there, and the relevant directorates that are responsible for this. But at a national level, I think there is a clear understanding and an embrace of science on these aspects. Thanks.
Yeah, and of course, Lindy, you'll be chairing a panel later. Yeah, all right. Any other question? Yes.
That's an input, not a question. He's from DST.
Thank you. Yes, Ben Durham from DSTI. Just with respect to the last question, there is a process underway at the moment that is looking at our current approach. It's not to say that the outcome will be different, but there is a process underway, and I remain optimistic that there will be a better outcome than the consistent treating of NBTs as GMOs. But my comment... my comment is about the awareness of what government is doing. Are we aware that there is a national biosecurity hub that is funded by my department and Department of Agriculture, that is specifically looking at biosecurity issues in order ultimately to enable trade, deal with the phytosanitary issues that can enable trade? It's also kind of a backstop for climate change that is changing the demographics of pests and diseases and so on. Are we aware that my department has been supporting a center of excellence in plant health biotechnology, which happened to be based at the University of Pretoria, but it's got many other things? The biggest challenge that I face is that because of the economic situation, our budgets are declining. This is across government, and I'm not against that, but there are priorities that government should be developing, and we're not yet on that priority list. Our investment in R&D is 0.61%, whereas the OECD average is 3%. What I'm saying is this is a room full of private sector and farmers and people dealing in the real world. We really need to come together to forge these partnerships so that what we are doing is in the best interests of developing the economy. So this is kind of an appeal to say, don't let government do certain things and we, the industry, do other things. Let's get together and work together on things. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
His question, comment is too winded, but let me help you so that you don't...
No. I'll quickly, so that I see Beatrix is looking for to get tea. But I will say this. I think at the biosecurity, at the conference Marinda organized at the University of Pretoria, there was really a consensus that we ought to support the work that they are doing. And I think the industry must continue to do that, because then pulling all of these resources, but also and aligning the vision of what is happening will be important. And now I will wear the hat which he says I moonwalk with at the Presidential Economic Advisory Council, and say we encourage you that the outcome of that work aligns with these interests that the industry wants, because that is key for the long-term prosperity of the sector on the genetics aspects. Thanks so very much.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the R&D question, how to elevate it, and in that way also elevate our competitiveness. It's a very big thing, and it's been sluggish, you're correct. It's been sluggish for a while, not only in agriculture, but generally. Some private sector companies actually allocate more money in R&D than state entities. So there's a whole lot that needs to be done with the ARC, CSIR, and other entities, the university councils, and you know, just to support R&D and commercialize these things. And I think if there's anything that he's mandating you to do in the advisory panel of the president is to say, guys, we need more R&D to boost the economy. Can you commit that you're going to do that?
We'll keep at it. Thank you so very much.
You exit this way.